Thank you everybody for taking the time to watch this. Really excited to talk to Prairie today about the work that she's doing. We've worked with her organization in the past and had such a positive experience. And so excited to share what she's doing with all of our clients around the world. And so with that, welcome. Excited to have you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's really been a joy and a pleasure working with WeHero and your team. I will just start out by a quick introduction. My name's Prairie Blunt. I am an enrolled member of the Fort Peck Sioux tribe, which is one of the tribes in Montana. I grew up on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation, which is a different tribe in Montana. And I went to school in Montana, and then I went to Washington, D.C. to do some work right at the beginning of my career. Absolutely fell in love with the city and the work that I was doing there. I spent 10 years, I think, in Washington, D.C., and I got to do a lot of community development. And it really helped me, really kind of open my eyes and see Native communities on a larger scale. We've Native Indigenous communities all over the world. And I was able to work with communities from Alaska all the way down to the Pacific Basin. And it was really amazing for me growing up on a small reservation in Montana, like 4,200 people were in our whole community on our reservation. And it was amazing for me to see the similarities and then also the differences in the community that I grew up in and then the communities that I was working in all over the globe. And I think that that's something that people may not know about Native Americans is that there are over 500 tribes here in the United States that were originally a part of this land and a part of this place. And we have our own distinct tribal groups, which means we have our own languages, we have our own cultural norms, our own ways of doing things, our own religion in a lot of different communities. And so when you're talking about Native Americans, it's easy to put us all into like one bucket. Yeah, we know them. We've seen a Western or we watched Pocahontas on Disney, so we understand what they're about. And I think it's an important reminder to realize that there's over 500 tribes and they're all so different and unique in really beautiful ways. So when I worked in DC, I was able to kind of zoom out and see the differences in our communities. And I really got a heart and a passion for helping our communities with the struggles that we have. And one of the things that had actually kind of catapulted my career was a nonprofit organization called American Indian Business Leaders. I was a part of this organization back when I was in college and even through grad school. And I can say, looking back, that it was one of the things that really was a backbone of support for me when I went to school. I knew nothing about going to school. I knew nothing about the university systems, about scholarships, about financial aid, and the people and the organization of ABEL really helped me walk through that process.
So before we get into ABEL, can I ask a few follow-up questions?
Sure.
Because I know we'll talk a lot about ABEL. I would love to hear about your experience, obviously growing up in a small community, and then transitioning to DC, which is a very diverse community, but very different than Montana. And I'd love to hear about your personal experience with that shift. And then I'd also love to hear, you mentioned just the diverse communities, and you were trying to represent all of them and support all of them. While they all had very different traditions, did they have similar goals that you were trying to help them with? And how did you bring all those communities together?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start with the first part. Growing up in a small community in Montana and then going to a big city like Washington, D.C. was it was a huge cultural shock to me. And looking back, honestly, I don't know that I would have had the courage to do it. Looking back, I was young and I thought, this will be fun. Let's try it. And I just really jumped into it. And I found an amazing network of Native women in DC that really embraced me. And showed me around, let me hang out at their house. And it's like I just instantly had a Native family community in DC, and that made all the difference. But I will tell you, it was an absolute shock. Like I look back and I just think I had no idea what I was doing or where I was going. And I just, when you're young, you want to have some good, fun experiences. And that's kind of what I looked at it as for me. And it turned out to be one of the best decisions of my life, because I made some really amazing connections while I was in DC, relationships, sisterhoods that I still hold dear to my heart, 20 years later. And if I would not have taken that chance, if I would not have taken that risk to move, I would not have those relationships. And I don't know what my life would be like without those relationships, honestly. So it was
good to not know sometimes, I guess.
Right. No, it was fun, and it was exciting. And I honestly, I embraced the moment. I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea how to do what I was trying to do, but I just went with it. I rolled with the punches. I tried to learn everything that I could kind of on the fly. And DC is a place that's, the work ethic in DC is so much more fast paced than what I had anticipated, especially growing up in a small town. The work ethic and just the culture that I was immersed in DC was a whole new ballgame. And I rolled with it, and I reached out to people for support if I didn't know what I needed to be doing or what I should be doing. And I'm thankful for every moment that I spent there. It was an amazing time. I have amazing memories and friendships that came out of that. So I'm very thankful for that. But it was a shock. I will tell you that I didn't know anything about politics moving to DC. And one of my first jobs was working directly for a political appointee. So it was like, I had to really pick it up quickly. But it was good. It was a good thing. And I'm thankful for it.
Yeah, I can imagine a lot of those experiences have formed kind of how you lead your organization now. And so it's great learnings, probably looking back on it.
Yeah, definitely. Thank God we didn't have social media. Sometimes my friends and I talk, and we're like, can you imagine if we had social media back then? Like we had a really great time, and we bonded over some really, just like amazing experiences that we were all really just thrust into, because a lot of my friends were from small reservations in other, throughout Indian country. And we were figuring this out on the fly and together. And it was a really, really exciting time, and just happy there wasn't social media at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Probably made it special. Yeah. And then I'd love to hear just as a follow-up to that, sounds like you were kind of thrust into these friendships with people from different communities. What did you learn from that? And I guess, how have you taken that kind of through your experiences on how to work with other Native communities?
Yeah, I think, like you said, I was the only one from Lame Deer, from Northern Cheyenne, that was in my small circle of friends. And I think what I really took from that is the differences, but also the similarities. So we all came from different places, from all over the United States, different communities, and the differences were apparent, but also the similarities were really apparent too. I think one of the really amazing things that holds Indian country together is this notion and this idea of tribal sovereignty. So tribes are different than just a small little community in the United States, because tribes are individually set up and respected as sovereign nations. So when you go to a reservation, when you cross over into reservation territory, you're actually in a smaller country that's within the United States. And people don't know that. They don't recognize that. The laws are different. The cultural norms are different. The languages are different. What's okay on the res versus what's not okay off the res, everything's different. And I think that's one of the things that I noticed right off the bat was all of my friends, all the people that I hung out with had this really deep sense of pride and this really strong understanding that that we're coming from different places. We're coming from sovereign nations, and it's our responsibility and it's our duty to represent our people and our communities well. So that puts a lot of pressure on you as a person, but it also gives you a lot of freedom to think about ways that you can really lead in a really strong and a meaningful capacity. I know most of my friends that I met were on the same track. We want to see changes within our community. I'll speak from my community. I grew up in a small community where there was a lot of really, honestly, disparaging statistics. Really, really high unemployment. Really, really high diabetic and just really disparaging health statistics. Like our average lifespan for Native Americans within our community was like 10 or 15 years less than the average American that lived right off the reservation. So really just growing up in this community where things were so different, it made me really alert, and it made me curious, like why is it that, my lifespan is 10 years less than my neighbor who lives like 15 minutes away? Why is that? What is it? So it made me really curious to figure out, first of all, why, and then second of all, how do we fix this problem? Because it is a problem. And a lot of that and a lot of those questions were common threads in my discussions with my friends when I was in DC. How do we make things better back home? We always talked about back home. There was not a day that didn't go by that we didn't talk about, the communities that we had come from. All of us had friends and relatives, moms, dads, uncles, grandparents that lived still back home in our communities. And so we always talked about how can we make things better for people back home? And that was really something that I feel like it bound us together because we had a common mission. And we had an understanding that, hey, we come from crazy different places, Montana, South Dakota, Arizona, New Mexico, different in so many ways, but we still at the heart of it had concerns that were the same. The concern was, how do we make things better for our people? How do we make sure that this world, this earth that we leave behind is better for our children? How do we make sure that our kids, my kids, how do I make sure my daughter can live to her full potential and her life isn't cut short by 10 years just because she grew up on a reservation in Montana? So how do we change those things? And that was almost like a driving force for us because we're so passionate about it, and I feel like, there's fate involved, and, there's a reason that we all take the path that we have, and there's purpose behind each of our lives. And I feel like, if you are Native American, I feel like you feel that really strongly. Like, how do we make things better for generations to come? And that can take many different turns. Could be environmentally, it could be economically, it could be, just even in your own personal mental health and well-being. How do I live to my full capacity, and how do I possibly heal from generational trauma that has been passed down? So there's a lot of different aspects to being a leader and creating change within your community. And everyone's journey is different, and it takes on different components. And I think that when you get a group of Natives together, that's one of the things that comes up is you talk about generational trauma. A lot of things have happened to Native Americans that you're not taught in school. People don't talk about, the history and even the origins of reservations. Like, why do we have reservations in the United States? It seems weird when you think about it and you think, why would we need sovereign nations within the United States? Why? What's the purpose, and what's the creation story behind that? So I think that once we start digging into those things and trying to really figure out why and what our purpose is, I think, we unpack a lot of different things that we that help us along our path. And I know you don't want me to talk about ABEL yet, but ABEL was one of the things that helped me, and ABEL is one of the things that helps Indigenous students with creating change that they want to see, because it hasn't changed, Andy. Like I've been out of school for, I'm not going to date myself, but I've been out of school for a while, and students that I meet and students that work with my organization, they have the same passion for change within our community. So how do we enable them? How do we empower them? I don't like to say enable, because these students they're so brilliant, and their ideas that they have they're magic. I mean, like it's crazy, because I listen to them and I meet them and I hear their ideas and the ways that they want to create change. And I'm like, it's amazing. It's absolutely inspiring. So how do I help them? How do I use ABEL to help them and make sure they can get the results, to create that change?
Yeah. Well, we'll get into ABEL in 1 second. What you said resonated so much with me, because, you know what, I think your community bonded over, the Native community in the US, just from hearing your story, you bond over, what I think of as almost basic human rights in this age. And I think groups come together when there's similar problems they face. And it's sad that those problems still exist. But the thing that gets me really excited, seeing this from the outside, I'm obviously not a Native person, is that your community is focused on improving itself and reinvesting in itself, which when we work with other nonprofits, typically the executive directors have never faced that issue. And so they've obviously experienced it and supported it, but they've never had the same visceral feeling of what you're trying to change as what it sounds like you and your community has. And so I think obviously one of the reasons we love working with you and the way that you attack the problem is so creative, but that's what just stood out for me as you kind of shared that. And I wanted to double click on it. Yeah,
definitely. Definitely. I'm here. I'm literally sitting on the res right now. And it's personal for me. It's personal. I've got children and family and, people that I love in Indian country. And so this is not just something that pays the bills. This is something that I'm passionate about. And I hope and pray that comes through in the work that I do. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because it's definitely true.
All right, let's jump into ABEL. I know you've been holding yourself back, and the people want to know if you can just share a little bit about ABEL. Obviously, you mentioned that you actually took part in the programs when you were in high school. And so I'd love to hear, obviously the overview of ABEL as well as your experience within the organization.
Sure. So I'll just give a really quick overview of ABEL. ABEL is an acronym, obviously. It's American Indian or American Indigenous Business Leaders. So it's AIBL. And the heart and the soul of ABEL is to empower students to create the tools so that they can have careers and lives that they love. ABEL believes that ABEL believes that healthy communities are made up of passionate people that are doing things and contributing in ways that they find meaningful and ways that they love. So one of the examples that I like to talk about with our students is that the goal for people in general should be to have work that they are passionate about, to have work that they want to jump out of bed every morning and be like, I can't wait. I get to talk to Andy today at We Hero. It's going to be amazing. I get to meet with some students later, something that you're passionate about and you're excited about. So a lot of times the ways to do that is to get education. College is a great starting point. If you're not sure about what you want to do, college is a great starting point. So ABEL encourages and supports students all the way from high school to tribal college through university. And tribal college is just, it's kind of like a community college that's run on tribal lands and has a lot of input and influence from the local tribal community. And so ABEL operates in all three of those arenas. And the way that we encourage and support students are, we can boil them down into a few different buckets. One of them is scholarships. So tribal college and universities, we have scholarships for students so that they can get their education. We also do leadership development. We believe strongly that if you want to live a good life, leadership development is key, because our students are getting education and they will be placed into really key leadership roles. And so we want to prepare them so that they can handle that pressure and that they can lead well. And then the third way that we support students is by offering internships. So we do paid internships. We have a lot of corporate partners that we work with and through to place our students. I like to talk about our students with our corporate partners in a way that lets corporations understand that Natives bring a very, very unique perspective to the table. So when you're talking about diversity and you're talking about, a difference of opinion and a difference of life experience, Native Americans are like probably one of the most diverse people groups you're going to come across. We have, like we talked about, tribal nations here within the United States. So when our students grow up in these smaller communities, then they join the bigger workforce, they're bringing an entirely different perspective to the table. And the value in diversity and inclusion is a new perspective, right? That's how we get new solutions. That's how we think about things differently in corporate America. And that's really the diversity of Indigenous students, is that uniqueness. And students, if they are steered in the wrong direction, could think of that as a bad thing. I came from a small town. I don't know what's going on. I don't want to say anything because, my perspective might not be important. And one of the things that we encourage at ABEL is that perspective and that difference of opinion, that different life experience is key. And so really lean into that and own it, and don't be afraid to, let your experience be known, because that's what the value that you're bringing to the table as an Indigenous student. So we offer an paid internship program with some of our partners, tribal and corporate partners. And really, like I mentioned right at the beginning, the goal of ABEL was started back in the 90s. Back in the 90s, sounds like I'm talking about the 70s. It was started in the 90s. A group of tribal leaders got together and they said, hey, we're noticing a trend. We're seeing our students and our youth go off to school, go off to universities in bigger cities. And then they come home and they have an education, but they don't have experience. And as we know, leadership theory, education and real life experience is key. You can have all the head knowledge in the world, and until you try it out, it might not make sense to you. So the original goal of ABEL was a directive from our elders that said, our students are going to get their education. Let's continue supporting them in that, but let's take it up a notch and let's give them the experience that they need so that when they come home, they can bring like a 1-2 punch. They've got an education and they've got experience, and they can help create lasting and meaningful change within our tribal communities. So that was really the underlying original goal. Still to this day, the goal of ABEL is to create change and to help empower students to do that in their own unique ways. Like we don't dictate, we don't say what that should look like in your community, because we believe in tribal sovereignty, and we believe that the people who live in those communities are the ones that know how it should change, and they know how best to implement that change. So how do we empower those people? How do we empower those leaders to make those lasting impacts?
Yeah. I mean, what you do is obviously such a holistic program, and you're touching people at different stages of their development, whether it's, high school, tribal college, university, and then the leadership development. How do you measure the impact of what you do to make sure that you're hitting kind of these aggressive goals that you have?
Yeah, definitely. I think different components of our program are easier to measure. It's so easy to follow our interns because we have a cohort every year, of designated interns. It's so easy to keep up with them. It's so easy to see like where they started versus where they are now.
How many interns do you have, by the way, in the most recent cohort?
Yeah, so our most recent cohort, we're actually developing the cohort, as we speak. But last year, you know what? Last year was such a bad year. Because of COVID, 2020, and last year was I wouldn't say a good year. Let's talk about 2019.
Let's go to the normal world.
Let's go to the normal world. Pre-COVID, we had about 25. I think we had 25 or 30 students that we had. We really go through a whole program with them. We talk with them about things that they don't learn in school. In school, you learn about economics, you learn about accounting, you learn about marketing theory, you learn about all these things in school. But what you don't talk about is, hey, what if I have conflict at the job? What if I don't get along with my coworkers? Last year we had a student who said, I have a coworker who's asking me to go out to lunch with her every day. Do I have to do it? Like they didn't know, and so we offer direct leadership and direct support for them so they can ask those questions, so that they can know, like, if you're not getting along with someone or you don't want to go to lunch with them every day, like, here's a good way to maybe approach that conversation without, while being appropriate.
Yeah, it's like modern day street smarts.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And a lot of our students, this is their first job. This is their first internship. All the different corporations that we work with have a different cultural norm within their company. So we do the upfront work with the corporations, and we talk with them, like, what's it like to work at We Hero? Do you guys do casual Fridays? Like, is there like a specific thing that you're looking for in your students? So we do the upfront work so that we can have a good understanding about what our students need to do so that they can thrive at work. We really want our students to shine when they get there. So we try to take care of everything that they need up front. And that, I also like to say that that's, for us, it's quality over quantity. So when we first started the program, we were running really large cohorts, like very, very large cohorts. And we saw from the beginning and the ending feedback from our students was that we're stretching ourselves a little too thin. And in order to get the quality of experience for our interns, we had to scale it back a little bit. And we had to really go through and filter through the best applicants for the program, juniors and seniors. We used to have cohorts with high schoolers, and we used to have a whole different approach. And we really had to scale back, and we had to focus on the students that were getting really, really close to being done with school and really serious about figuring out what they wanted to do with their careers, because they were getting the most out of it. They were the ones that were just, eating up the experience and really making those life connections with their summer intern supervisors and coworkers. And so we've been shifting the program as we speak, and it is it has been easy to track those numbers and easy to see the progress, because we talk to them at the beginning, we talk to them in the middle, we talk to them at the end. We even follow them like years after they're done with the program, and we'll ask them to come back and mentor within the program. And we've got a lot of students that are doing that and that are really really successful. We have 3 years ago, we had a really amazing cohort, and I think we have 3 Native nonprofits that have started out of that cohort.
Wow.
Doing amazing work, doing environmental work, doing work with homeless populations within an Indian country, and really just doing like passion projects. And that's the goal. Like, it's easy to do work when you're passionate about it. You know that. Yeah. And if you're starting a business, and if you're wanting to be, if you're wanting to have a job that you're passionate about, like, tap into that why. What do you care about? Why do you do what you do? And so we're so happy that, some of our students have done that, and that they're literally making jobs and a life out of, the change, the passion that they'd like to see within other students. So it's easy to track them. It's a little bit difficult the further out we get from that intern cohort. So we have a large national conference every year. minus COVID. And so we do track those numbers as well. We do surveys. We're very active on social media. And so we throw things out on social media a lot just to make sure that we are relevant with our target market, our students. So we do a lot of data gathering. And I am so thankful that I have an amazing woman on my staff. She's an Indigenous woman who she loves data, and she loves collecting data, and she loves putting it together, and she loves telling me what it means, because I can look at the data all day and get a couple things out of it, but she can look at it and she can say, this is what this means, and this is how we can address this need. And so we track data like no other. And I'm
good
happy
to have those people on your team.
Yes.
Very good.
So good. Every time she sends me something, I'm just like so thankful and so grateful, because the data the numbers tell the story. The numbers really do tell the story, and they let us know what our students need, and then we can create programming to support them in ways that is meaningful to our students, and that's the goal, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think I think having the right data, measuring what you do is what's most important. And I think you can't look at the data exclusively. You need to combine that with the qualitative experience that you have, and kind of what you can see, being boots on the ground and seeing the change you're making in one individual's life, or, in the example you gave, kind of 3 new nonprofits, springing out of what you've done, which are just awesome inspiration.
Sure.
The other question we get from companies a lot about is, how does this organization think about financial transparency? We want to make a gift. How do you guys handle that? What are your thoughts? What's your philosophy around financial transparency?
Yeah, so transparency is important. Transparency is key. Financial program wise, people need to know what you're doing, right? So we work with, I'm sure GuideStar. Yep. It's basically a third party that kind of puts different levels, different stamps of approval on nonprofits. So we work with GuideStar so that we're listed within their registry. And as we are growing, there's different requirements to be on GuideStar. So as we've been growing, we've started out the base level, and we've moved up a couple of levels, and I'm pretty fairly certain that we will move up to the platinum level this year. Which, and the goal of GuideStar is to be transparent. You list your financials publicly. Anyone can go on GuideStar and look and see, where the money has gone, how much has been programmatic versus, management or overhead. So for me as a program manager, as the director of this nonprofit, I'm basically an open book. Like the money that has been given towards our programs, it's not a secret. Like what we do with our money, I feel like it's almost like a responsibility. People are trusting me when they give me when they give ABEL funding. They're trusting me to make the right decisions to make sure that our students are helped in the most useful way. And so GuideStar is just one of the ways that our board has decided, let's get on board with this organization, and let's work with them so that it's not me sitting here. I could say all day, hey, yes, everything's good and everything's fine. But until you have a third party that comes in and validates that, that does your accounting, looks over the decisions that you're making, I feel like it means a little bit more when you're doing that. So that's something that's definitely on my board of directors' radar, and it's something that they've instructed me, make sure that you keep this financial transparency a top priority. So
yeah, I feel like we should be an ad for GuideStar at a certain point. It's funny, Ben and I had a conversation a few days ago just about how we vet nonprofits, and GuideStar does such a good job around the transparency, and the fact that you're kind of reaching for that platinum level just, I think, shows how impressive you are. That is a very difficult place to get. And there's a number of transparent nonprofits that are well below that. And so, yeah, GuideStar does a great job with that. And so I'm glad to hear that you guys are really leaning into that.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, last 2 quick questions here.
Sure.
If you look out at your organization over the next 3 years, I want to hear the one thing that scares you, and then the one big opportunity you have.
Okay, so I'll start, they're sort of related. I'll start with the big opportunity I see for our students over the next 3 years is our internship program. We have had, just through our amazing partnerships, we've had some opportunities come up that really, really could change students' lives. You know, if they lean into that and if they really own those experiences, I could see them making really lifelong career moves based off of these internship experiences. So I'm super excited about that. We're sort of leveling up the program, and we're like I said, quantity over quality. So we're really thinking about ways that we can add quality material to the internship program specifically. So I'm really excited about that. I think it's something that our students really, really benefit from. And personally, I have benefited from just amazing internships that have turned into mentoring relationships with people in my field that have really taken me under their wing and have helped me. So the goal of the program is to kind of mirror that and to do that. And it's a huge challenge, but it's also a huge opportunity. And it's amazing to see the changes that these students create. They're, like I said earlier, they're just absolutely brilliant. And so that is exciting. And that's a huge, that's a huge plus in the future. The challenge always for nonprofits is, how do we get there? How do we pay for this? I have students and I have corporations and I have, tribal partners that are all ready, willing, and able, but how do we make sure that we can connect the dots? And how do we make sure that we can keep the lights on? And I think that's probably a challenge for all nonprofits, especially in 2020, 2021. We've seen a major shift in funding sources for us that have always been very stable, and almost, these relationships that we've had multi-years with different organizations and different foundations. They're pulling back because of the shift in the market, and it's been an interesting time. It's been a really last 18 months have been a really defining era, I think. And a lot of new partnerships have come out of that. So I'm very thankful. But as the director, in the back of my mind is always, how do we make sure that ABEL's around, not for this year and next year, but for 10, 15, 20 years in the future? Really trying to think ahead and trying to make sure that we can do this work, because it's been validated over and over and over again. The work that we're doing with our students, it's meaningful to them. And a lot of them really look forward to interacting with our programs and have gotten a lot out of our programs. So how do I be a responsible relative, and how do I make sure that this organization is set up and can continue after I'm gone? My daughter, she's 8 years old, and she always says she wants to be the director of ABEL. So how do I make sure that she can?
We're going to have some competition in a little bit here.
I know.
Yeah,
exactly.
No, what you said is such a relevant point, because we've heard this again and again from, our nonprofit partners is, the funding sources have really shifted a lot. And I think we understand that from the outside. I think companies understand that, individuals understand that. But what is so hard for you sitting in this seat is you can see the impact that you could be making.
Yeah.
But you need to, it's a delicate balance. And it's obviously why your job is so challenging. And and the importance of having good leaders at these, nonprofits is so essential. So.
Yeah. And I like I said, there has been a shift, but I feel like there's almost been a realignment too. Like partners are coming to us that really, really understand and really, really want to support our mission. And for that, I am very grateful and I am thankful, because it just brings an extra amount of understanding, and it just brings that, it really ties you together with a partner when you guys are headed in the same direction. And so I've been thankful for that, despite all of the challenges and the things that have happened in the past year or two. I feel like it's shaking us down to making us really be rock solid. Why are you doing this? What's your purpose here? What change and what are you trying to contribute to Indian country? So it's calling us to be more clear, and that has also resonated with our partners. So I guess just buckle up. We're along for the ride on this, but I'm happy to still be working, and I'm happy to still be supporting students in any capacity that we can.
Yeah. Well, Prairie, thank you for the time today. I know you're very busy and you have a lot to do, but I appreciate you taking the time, and excited for all the companies we work with to learn more about what you guys do and drive support your way. So thank you again. I really appreciate it. And if anyone has any questions for Prairie, feel free to reach out on their website. We'll have that linked in the notes here. As you can tell, she's very inspirational and would probably love to talk to you about the different initiatives that they're pursuing. So thank you again. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.